better card games than most people will ever play. What does that even mean? Welcome to Board Game Animal. My name is Justin, and today we're going to be talking about something a little bit special that's been a bit of a current obsession of mine. Let's rewind a little bit and go back to relatively near the end of 2024, where I first discovered the 6 of 8 somewhere on social media, and then I saw the Dice Tower talking about it. While looking up the publisher, I recognized Daniel Newman's name from the awesome Tricktaker Mori. You know that feeling of when you travel somewhere that you've never been before, and you go to like a little gift shop or novelty general store, and you're finding things that you'd never find anywhere else, that kind of special feeling of discovery. That's how I felt when I first found the 6 of 8. And to be honest, all of these games kind of give off the vibes of something you'd find in a shop like that. A little unique treasure that you say to yourself, how did I not know this existed before this moment? And since that discovery of 6 of 8, I may have ordered a package or 2 or 3 from said indie publisher, New Mill, or sometimes Little Dog. And honestly, I just had to talk about these games. Now, about that title of the video. You know, it's often in the board game hobby that we talk about the copious amount of games that are out there that people just don't know about. They don't know about the magical world of gaming and all of the amazing quality of games that they're missing out on. It's true, I've genuinely met a lot of folks who really think that Monopoly, Uno, Scrabble, and maybe a couple others are the only board games that even exist. So yeah, it's kind of old hat at this point. We know that there is this massive world in the board game hobby that people would be shocked exists. But for some reason, as of late, playing these New Mill and Little Dog games, that whole idea has been in the front of my mind. Because these are all small, unassuming games that play off of ideas that folks are likely familiar with. Card shedding, trick taking, following suit, forming patterns, and so on and so forth. But these games somehow, while not being too far removed from the familiar, are leaps and bounds better in quality than the card games that the majority of the population are familiar with. And even within the hobby, these games are not talked about enough. And I wanted to take a few minutes to either create some or contribute to the hype surrounding some of these games because they are really, really fun. I'm not really going to go into too much of the nuances of how to play these games. Because to be honest, I'm not going to do it as good as the in-depth coverage you're going to find over at Taylor's Trick Taking Table. His videos are phenomenal, and I'm going to include a link down to some of them below in the description. So if you want to see the rules on how specifically to play these games, go check his videos out. So in general, I just want to give more of a quick preview and my thoughts on the games. Now, so far, every game that I've played from this publisher somehow transports me back into a simpler time of my gaming career. You know, I grew up where game nights were an important and regular thing in my family, and through my folks and grandparents, I learned and played a lot of traditional card games as a little kid. Setback and Peanuts and Hearts and a lot at a very young age. And I think that kind of primed me for my love of the hobby today. And some of these games bring back some of those early memories of those cozy game nights with family. And it reminds me of a certain compliment that I often like to give games, or I suppose that's because I choose to talk about games that give me this feeling and check those specific boxes for me. That compliment is when a board game or card game design simultaneously feels really classic, like a forgotten treasure of the past, while still feeling punchy and fresh in the modern hobby today. For me, that's how I feel about the games I'm about to talk about, because none of them are crazily overproduced with unnecessary bells and whistles, but still feel modern and kind of hip and trendy. And bottom line, I just think it's a crime that they're not recognized more. So let's get into it. Dickory is a hand management ladder climbing card game where the rank of the cards is constantly changing. There's no suits, but instead a moving circular ranking based on the farthest card in the river of cards currently in play. You'll be playing cards in different sets, climbing the ladder all the while paying attention to what the current ranking is. This is also a simple thing, but I love the utilization of the game box in gameplay, moving the little mouse to the part of the clock to keep track of what the current high ranked number is. It's just a simple, clever, but delightful use of a game's components. And I think in general, charm is a lot of what Dickory brings to the table. It's a really easy to pick up game that has a very interesting, that makes you constantly evolve your strategy while you're playing. Best Shot is a team-based trick-taking game playing multiple holes of golf, and the rank of the cards is going to depend on what kind of shot you're trying to make, whether you're driving, doing a chip-in, or putting. And this is a great team game that's a really easy teach, but has nice clever moving parts where everyone's always got to stay on their toes and work to stay in sync with your teammate. If you like partnership games, this is a great one to check out. Lepodopter is a phenomenal little two-player only hand management ladder climbing game where the combinations of cards you play dictate where you put your markers in a really clever little Connect 4 like system. I think not only fans of ladder climbing games will enjoy this, but I think this could really scratch the itch of fans of tense two-player games or even abstract strategy games, as I think this will click into that critical thinking that fans of such look for. Now let's look at the Tricktakers from Daniel Newman. One of the things that I love in general from these games is there's a bit of a thread of whimsy throughout all of them. I don't even know how to put my finger on it specifically, but just for example, in the enemy and enemy, it literally says blatantly, there's not really a lot of theme here, but the name's pretty fun to say, right? Almost as fun as the game itself. This is a super clean design of a trick taker, one that I really enjoy and super easy to teach folks. But it has a really enticing hook to make you want to keep playing. It's a must not follow trick taker, and throughout you'll be gaining enemy cards that will later change the value of future cards. I don't know, this one just feels really classic, but with just that nice little subtle, clever twist on the formula. And I think you could introduce to all kinds of folks who have never played a trick-taking game before or fans of the genre. I think Enemy and Enemy is just a great little package all in all. And the name is really fun to say. Then there's also Reapers, where you're going to be drafting your hands at the start of the deal. Bet on how you're going to perform, and then try to manipulate the tricks to the best of your ability with some special cards. It's pretty involved, I'll say, for the games on this list. So I think it's definitely better suited. Nope. Yeah, pun intended. For folks who are very invested in, very thinky trick-taking games that involve a decent amount of planning ahead. And then we have Gash Upon Trick. This one is a super fun little trick taker with a strong element of set collection. Start the game with some money, and every time you win a trick, you have to buy something, and you're trying to collect sets of the little trinkets. Visually, I think this one will click with fans of the theme, but also for people who like trick taking that also like a little bit of an economic swing in their games. Look how cute this one is. Dino Tricks Tarot Adventures is actually 3 games in one on a French tarot sized deck, and it contains within the 3 games Hold My Beer, Oopsie, and Thread the Needle, which are all twists on the same basic card play with unique powers and scoring. The trick taking involves predictive bids and clever abilities depending on the cards you play. The artwork by Sai Beppu is wildly charming and adorable, and makes an already really fun system a joy to play and look at while you're playing it. The production overall is phenomenal, and I really think that alone could be a real draw to play. But the games within are spectacular too. I think if you're a fan of trick taking, this is going to be a must have in general, but especially if you like a game that has really dynamic options for all the different player counts. Not to mention just having a great trick taking game on an unusual type of deck. Dino Tricks is absolutely a can't miss. The 6 of 8 by Carol LeGros was one of my favorite games of 2024 period, and continues to grow for me as also one of my favorite trick takers period. Its theme actually stands out as each of the titular 6 queens has her own suit, which is trumped during her reign, and the suits and the years in the timeline are proportional to the lengths of the reign of each of Henry VIII's wives, which is really just a neat thematic thing to include in a type of game where normally theme doesn't have that much effect on gameplay. But in general, the play itself just absolutely sings with this game. And I still think that 6 of 8 is an absolute standout in this era where we're rich for great trick-taking games. Oh, Greasy Spoon from Sean Ross is one of my favorite games in the bunch. And I'm sure it may be one of the most divisive as well, as it is a pretty chancy game. However, the more I play it, the more depth I see, and the more I appreciate the tempo of the game, which may be a little jarring to some folks at first. It's a card-shedding, ladder-climbing 2-player game where each player has their own deck and constantly replenishing hand, but with a clever backburner mechanism of being able to place cards essentially on hold when you pass, and eventually shuffle that discard back into your draw deck. There's something so satisfying about this game. Ultimately, it feels like pure, distilled hand management at its finest and most precise, with a couple clever twists, and that's all ultimately a race to whoever can deck out the fastest. I love Greasy Spoon, and while it may not be for everyone, I personally love the speed of the game and the flow, where it's a lot of back and forth for a while until the game crashes into this delightfully tense finale that hopefully you prepared well for, and every single card played matters, and it's such a great little crunchy thinky end to a game that otherwise felt pretty smooth throughout the actual play up until that tense finale. I highly recommend giving Greasy Spoon a chance. It's now likely for me my favorite card shedding or ladder climbing game, period. And finally, Crisps by Shreeshbot. Oh, it's not actually there. Crisps is another delectable little hand management ladder climbing game that's going to be on its way to having a physical copy later this year. Up to this point, I've been having a blast playing it on Board Game Arena. There are a lot of clever little ladder climbing hooks with this one and interesting card melds you can play, and I know once I get a physical copy, it will indeed be one of my most played games because, as is the intent of the title, this game is like eating a crisp or a chip. It's nigh impossible to just stop at one. You're going to want to keep playing it over and over and over again. I'm dying for a physical copy of Crisps. I think it's just incredibly charming, and for me, it's definitely a sleeper hit of 2025. Wow, that's 10 games that for me all range from super good and solid games to absolutely spectacular. And yeah, while some of these may be more oriented to the fans of the mechanisms within, so many of these are really approachable and would truly rock the world of folks who've only ever played card games like Uno or Phase 10 or Solitaire. So I really recommend giving these games a whirl. For you, if you love the sound of these, and not just for you, but also as novelty little catalysts to share with non gamers in your life. Why? Because they're likely going to be like crisps and they're not going to be able to put it down after just playing them once. And if you're not in the board game hobby and you've stumbled upon this video and have watched this, please give these games a try. And if you have any questions for specific recommendations, leave them down below. Because these are some games you don't want to miss out on, because ultimately they're little gems that are better card games than most people will ever play. So please, please, please check out New Mill and Little Dog's games. There will be a link to their site down below in the description. Please check that out. And one disclaimer, I know some of the games I talked about today are not currently available, and I'm really sorry about that. I know it's a bummer, but trust me, I'm actually in the same boat. I have a few little Grail games myself now from New Mill and Little Dog, and hopefully one day I'll be able to get my paws on them as well. And somehow for me, it kind of even contributes to the novelty of these games. It makes collecting these all a little bit sweeter. There's even more to discover. So yeah, let me know if you have any questions or comments down below. Thank you so much for watching, liking, and subscribing. And don't forget to always play board games like an animal, especially like a little dog.
Or like a frog. I mean, do you even see these beauties? They're fantastic.